And Alicia, what motivated you to study?
So similarly, and this really shows me how key it is, my parents are both in STEM. So my mum's a maths teacher. She's always worked through our childhoods. And my father has a PhD in biochemistry. So I didn't have that negative association with like men engineering. Someone tried to point me to bring the stereotype into it. My mum sent me to a tutor, and she was older. And so she says, right, so what do you want to do at university? And I was like, yeah, I'm not sure. I really like physics. But obviously engineering is not a subject taught at school.
Yeah.
So you don't quite know what it's about. And this older tutor woman said to me, so you like physics, right? I said, engineering, maybe, I'm not really sure. And she said, oh, do you like cars? She literally said to me, do you like opening up the bonnet and getting stuck in, getting a greasy hat? I'm like, no, actually. And that put me off applying for engineering. I applied for physics, and then the physics department rejected me at Imperial. And I fell short on the grades, and I went to an engineering department. And actually, that's the best thing that happened to me, because it was engineering that I wanted to do. So unfortunately, there is still a lot of that like stereotyping. And I almost got nudged off track, but I clawed my way back into what I always wanted to do, which is definitely engineering. Yeah.
No, that's really interesting story, and it really shows how important it is to have people that do understand the different subjects around you. Otherwise, we may not have you studying in engineering if it wasn't for the luck of the draw. Well, it may not seem lucky at the time, but
exactly.
For us now that you're able to study engineering with us. So, no, thank you for that. And so, what were some of your motivations?
So I'm slightly different than the ladies here. And this is good because for people who don't necessarily have parents who come from the STEM fields, you can chat with me about it. So neither of my parents went to university. So I'm the only female doctor in my family. I'm in my extended family, I think I'm the only scientist. Oh yeah, I'm the only scientist. Well, budding scientist. My brother's an engineer, but I'm the only one who is studying in an engineering field. So how I landed into STEM and medicine has been, again, quite serendipitous. When I was in school, we had to study so many subjects, and I loved all of them. And when it came to deciding what I wanted to do after our national exams, I spoke to my guidance counselor. What do I do? And he looked at my transcript and he said, maybe you should do medicine. And I thought, okay, that's interesting. What field combines everything that I like? And medicine is really interesting. There's physics, there's engineering, there's biology. There's also elements of creativity in it. So I thought, okay, let's get into medicine and see how this goes. And then, as I mentioned before, when I was practicing medicine, I realized that it became very algorithmic, and we weren't addressing the larger determinants of medicine, and also about improving medical education. And this is probably because, well, there are many factors, but from my observation, it was because of failure being treated as something that is bad in medicine. In medicine, we have to approach different problem-solving way. It has to be top-down heavy. You can't iterate with human life. The time that you can iterate is perhaps in a study, but in day-to-day practice, you can't iterate with day-to-day life. So things become very algorithmic and it didn't feel creative enough for me. So I just got really curious. What's the problem here? Is it education? So I went to medical education. Do we need to address the wider determinants of health? So I went into public health. And then there I was introduced to statistical methods for epidemiology, and I realized that the thread that runs through all these things is data. And I realized that data is beautiful, and I love playing with data, and that's how I ended up with where I am now. So it's been a very convoluted journey for me. Oh, I'll mute myself now.
Great, no, thank you for sharing that. And it's a really interesting point that you made, that fact that you didn't have those family representations, like there's a panel, which is really great to have, because then you have people that you can bounce back some ideas across. So I'm just wondering, what are some of the obstacles you faced on your journey to this point to get to where you are at the moment?
Oh, me? Okay,
Yeah,
sorry.
While we've got you.
Oh, right. Okay, sure. So I think the obstacles, if I were to group them, I would say extrinsic and intrinsic. And the extrinsic ones, I would say maybe are related to where I was raised and the conditioning I received. And the professional one, I've spent all my tertiary education and professional life in the UK. So growing up, I don't really see very many Malay women going into the sciences, as I mentioned before, in my family. Even the men, there aren't people who do that. And that would be the first extrinsic one. And also coming from a Muslim majority country where there's a certain idea that women can't hold the highest positions in leadership or in the sciences, it was really difficult to see myself doing that. And traditionally, Malay women are relegated to more traditional gender roles. And I see people around me just asking, oh, when are you going to get married? When are you going to have children? So yeah, it was really difficult from that point on. And then coming to the UK, I became a minority coming from a Malay majority country. I became a minority. And there I see, I don't see very many senior consultants in high academic positions. 9 out of 10 of my supervisors have been men. All my referees were men. And I don't know why. We see this a lot in the data in the medical education. Women tend to do well academically, but they don't do well in their careers. And also in exams, minority ethnic groups tend to fare better. So those are, I would say, broadly the extrinsic challenges. And at the same time, intrinsically, or maybe this is intrinsic, extrinsic, I didn't have a lot of social support. With medicine, I have to move around a lot. And every time I create a network of support, I have to move again, and that social support just disintegrates. So most of the time I find myself quite lonely. I can't talk to my parents about that because they don't understand it. And I don't have somebody close that I can speak to. So those are mainly the extrinsic things. And intrinsic, I'd say perhaps things that I've been battling all my life has been the stereotype threat of being a woman and a minority. And a woman, around me in Malaysia, people say, oh, girls don't do well in math or physics. And also coming here, a stereotype of a minority. And I felt that my professional competence was related to my ability to pass my exams and things like that. I'm sorry, are you, for people who aren't aware of what the stereotype threat is, this is a phenomenon that was coined by psychologists Aronson and Steele about this situation where someone has this anxiety of not conforming to a stereotype. So I continuously have this internal battle of not conforming to the stereotype of being a minority and a female. If I failed my postgraduate exams, for example, I'd feel that people say, oh my God, yeah, of course, English isn't her first language. She's, she spent her childhood abroad. Of course, she's not going to pass the test. So there's always that. And there's also a lot of imposter syndrome problem. I'm a medic in engineering. I left physics and math over a decade ago. So yeah, those are mainly the intrinsic things. But it was largely shaped by the extrinsic factors of my upbringing and my professional life.
No, definitely, and thank you for sharing that. And I will pick back up on the point a bit about the intersectionality element of it, about being a minority and a woman in STEM and the role that that plays. But I do want to bring it back to the rest of the panel. What are some of the other obstacles that you may face? I could see a lot of nodding was going on. Definitely.
That's a very, I have to comment on that because I'm very interested in that, being one of the sufferers of it. I read somewhere that it's that the imposter syndrome is much more typical for women than for men, and that it has to do with the upbringing of boys and girls. Boys are so I'm now generalizing things a bit. Boys are usually naughty, and girls are obedient. That this is, I'm just saying this in general. There are always the odd ones out. And girls like to be good and to obey whatever the parents expect from them and so on. And so they say that when boys are naughty and then the parents try to correct their mistakes, they would usually tell them, listen, you are not doing good now, but if you work on it, if you try hard, you will succeed, whatever that is. Whilst for girls, it's usually patting on the head, oh, you're a good girl, you're a smart girl, and so on. And so apparently girls are used to the fact that they're good and smart and they are that at a certain level and they can't really do much about it. So they can't really improve it because they are what they are and that's it. While boys are raised in a way that they know that if they try hard, they will achieve more. Apparently this is one of the roots of the imposter syndrome that women tend to have. Definitely, I think this is probably the main obstacle that I'm facing, this inner doubt, more than something that actually happens from the outside. The extrinsic obstacle that I've encountered, especially now as a lecturer, is that I'm often not really taken seriously by the students because I'm a relatively young woman. So if I say something, if I try to convey the same piece of information as my male colleague, I'll have one committee who has to have the authority, but I think that in general the climate is such that people, in this case students, tend to take male academics more seriously than female. So that's something that we have to work on ourselves, but also something that we have to work on within the wider community, just to make people used to the fact that women can also be authorities for them.
Can I ask you a question about that?
Yeah.
So,
they're like, yeah, like if I tell them something, they might respond in a too friendly a way, in that kind of. So I'm not saying that there needs to be a big barrier between a lecturer and the students, but in the response that I receive from students, I can see that they don't really take everything I say seriously enough.
And given you're teaching electrical engineering, I'm assuming reaction, like, do you think if it was a class of women, or do you see the same reaction from the women as well, students?
That's a good question. Well, the statistics are such that most of my students are male, so on average it will be a male student providing the
do you see a reaction from the girls?
From the female? No, I think that they're taking it more seriously.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
And any?
Okay, I don't, well, obviously I suffered from imposter syndrome for a very long time, especially doing my PhD. It was one of the biggest struggles, and you know, I really worked hard to get over that, and I really had to train myself that, you know, failing is okay. If I don't do something perfectly, that's completely fine. I'm a human being, I'm allowed to make mistakes. But unfortunately, deep inside, I was suffering from that syndrome. Getting to your point about, you know, how the kids are raised, that made me think, because I have a brother and sister. We're all raised the same way, at least that's what I was thinking. And maybe, yeah, maybe there was a factor of that. You know, my brother was naughty. He was never, you know, the most studying, you know, concentrated guy in the house. And, you know, my parents would try to make him do things like we were doing, like the daughters were doing, but they were also ready to accept that even if he does a little better than what he's actually doing, that was good enough. But to be honest, growing up, I never felt that as a pressure or as a discrimination based on gender. It was more about, for me, it was more about seeing the personality of your kid and seeing what they're capable of, and then pushing their limits to achieve what they can achieve the best. So my sister and I was treated differently when it came to academic success and how we moved forward with our lives. In terms of extrinsic, I'm not the best example, I guess, over here, because I can't really say that I faced an obstacle in my professional or academic life based on my gender. True, I was one of the 5 girls in my class. True, all of my lecturers were male. My supervisor was male, apart from my master's thesis supervisor. She was a female, specialized in mathematics area. But currently the team that I work in is male dominated. Actually, I'm the only one in my team, a female field application engineer. But I guess I'm lucky enough to not to feel any obstacles or gender biased actions from my colleagues, my peers, my supervisors. I was always supported. My ideas were always listened to. My point somehow got across, and I never felt under pressure that because I'm a woman, I need to work twice harder or I need to do better. I don't know, maybe it's because of the way I was raised. We were taught to be brave and, you know, speak our minds and make, regardless of the audience, get your point across. And I guess that gives a little bit of a different level of confidence that can be sensed by your audience, by the people that you're working, that might, I'm saying might, I'm not saying for sure, that might affect that might stop any gender biased actions. So unfortunately, after listening to all of these stories, I really haven't faced a real obstacle that I can give it as an example. And I hope there will be more women that would feel the same way that I do during their academic life and professional life, and don't feel the pressure of, you know, I need to be perfect. I need to work twice as hard. I can't fail. I need to make this happen. So I hope we can influence more young people, females especially, to feel the same way that I do. And we can do this by, you know, creating awareness and educating the society, basically.
Yeah, definitely. No, thank you for that. And I think the main thing to pick up on from everything that you've all been saying is the fact that, yes, we are speaking about gender and gender bias today, but it is a very layered and complex situation that you've been facing. So we've got elements of age when it comes to respect that we don't talk about quite a lot of, and you were very young, so you will never know what age you are, but it's again about commanding that level of respect. And when do you become more assertive in that space, and when does it feel right, and knowing when that feels right. But also we had again a bit about ethnicity in the role that plays, but we also got to think about disability, sexual orientation, etc., and the levels that will play when we are studying and again becoming lecturers in our fields. And you mentioned about this, that you faced an older person who said, oh, engineering, no, that's just about cars and everything else.
The irony is my PhD is related to electric vehicles.
You see?
She was right after all.
But it's not just about
No,
that.
no, I'm joking.
And all of these are the various obstacles that people may face during their careers, but hopefully, like you mentioned, that we will finally get to a place where we can start to overcome those, and that those obstacles are not the norm. And that's, I think, the point that we're really trying to get to, that it's not normal to face barriers, that we can come to these spaces and say, yes, I've just done my PhD in electrical engineering, or I have become a lecturer in engineering. And it's just a norm. We don't have to think about the challenges that we have faced to get there. And I can see, Asmin, you raised your hand to make a point. So I think.
Yeah, what Yelena said about it's just just to echo what Yelena was saying about how her students don't necessarily take her seriously. I remember in hospital, I wasn't taken seriously by some men, not all. And it's very strange what people's perception of a doctor is. I've had a lot of situation where male patients ask me, "Where's the doctor?" And I just go, "I am." Previously, I looked more, I dressed more like a Muslim woman. That also added another layer of difficulty. I once had a male patient said to me, "You better be careful the Taliban doesn't catch a female like you reading and writing." And then I also had another patient who said to me, "Sure, of course, I guess you weren't given the same opportunity where you come from." I also had female colleagues going on to me asking, "So how does it feel to work in a non-male dominated country?" But it's just to I think from colleagues, they don't necessarily say this overtly, because, well, they would have a lot of problems with their professional career if so. But I overhear things. One of my research supervisors when I was an undergrad was commenting to another colleague about how their female boss, "Oh yeah, she's getting older, not cute now." So I think it's easier when the discrimination is overt. I think the problem is when it's quite insidious, and you don't know how to deal with that because it's in a gray area. So yeah, I was just echoing what Yelena was saying.
And while we've just got you there, so how did you overcome some of those barriers that you faced? And
a lot of time I just take charge. And I said, like, "Look, I'm your doctor now." Usually I adopt, I have many masks that I put on. The professional mask is like super serious. I just go, "I'm a doctor now. I'm going to take charge and you're going to listen." Or for the person who was being inappropriate with the Taliban jokes, I said, "Well, where I come from, we're a bit more liberal than that." And I just left. But I've adopted a zero tolerance approach to these sorts of remarks. And I say that if you can't talk to me like that, and if you continue with this behavior, then I can't treat you. You'll have to find a different doctor, or I just call it out basically. And usually when I just take charge, people listen. But it's hard. It doesn't always happen, and I've made a lot of errors in the past as well. But yeah, I just have to own it. I mean, like Yelena as well. I mean, I'm a lot older than many PhD students, but being a Malay woman, we don't look very old in this stage. We tend to, our aging accelerates towards the later decades of life. So I've had male patients confusing me with a medical student. Thanks, but. But yeah, usually I just take charge, and that's it really.
So some of the more direct, assertive approach to tackling some of those issues. Brilliant, thank you. And about tackling imposter syndrome. Mm-hmm. So how have you overcome some of that?
Well, this is based on again, so I heard about it. There was a very good workshop organized by a psychologist at the University of Manchester, and he talked for a while about that, and he mentioned two cures for that. So the first one, because the imposter syndrome is the feeling that you are not, that you are lying to everyone else about your success, that you actually don't deserve it, that you kind of mistakenly got to the point where you are, God knows how, and that anytime someone might discover that, and that would be the end of the world, of course. So I heard about two techniques. One of them is to first recognize that people around you have it as well. So that kind of brings a relief when you actually are aware that you're not the only person feeling like that. That really helps. And another very interesting approach is to think, okay, so if I have been lying to everyone and I've been so successful in it so far, well, I just have to keep doing whatever I'm doing. So those are the two different approaches that I have found very useful. But in general, I think that it is very good to maybe occasionally put on a piece of paper, list the things that you have achieved, just to remind yourself what you have done, and that it is not someone else's success, that it is your own. And I guess it's a constant battle, inner battle that we'll have to take, at least us with the syndrome.
Yeah, absolutely. No, thank you for sharing that. In your practice, do you have anything new there?
I guess in my case, definitely knowing that others have it helped a lot, and even hearing it now, I just feel better about it. I also did this personal thing where I was trying to, as I said, I was trying to convince myself that it was okay to fail, and I did fail before, and it was an end of the world. I mean, I actually failed a module here during my master's degree very badly, very, very badly, and it was my first fail in life. After the exam, I was crying and saying, I'm going to fail. And my dad actually said, okay, so what happens if you fail? Well, I'm just going to resit the exam. And I was like, okay, so why are you crying? I was like, oh yeah, why am I crying? I'll just resit the exam. And yeah, it was an end of the world. So I just kept on reminding about this experience. And every time I doubt my abilities, my success, I would just try to motivate myself. And the second most important thing for me was my actually the counseling sessions. It wasn't officially counseling, but I would sit down with my supervisor and just say, sir, I mean, I think I'm a joke. I'm not going to be able to do it. And he's like, look, I invested a lot of time in you. Do you think I would just waste my precious time for someone who's a joke? And I was like, oh yeah, that's true. Thank you very much. And that would keep me going. And that kept me going. So I guess that's how I tackled my imposter syndrome obstacle. And believe me, everyone feels it at some stage in their lives, and you are not a joke. I can tell you, you're not a joke. If you're here or anywhere, have some success. Definitely, it's your success, and you deserve it.
Brilliant. I mean, I couldn't sum up any better myself.
Just to add to it, I think that's really useful, and I've used the same techniques. One of the other ones that I've used that's quite helpful is, okay, if there's some truth to, you not being as good as the people around, and I think in reality, yeah, there probably is on some level. And that was my insecurity, that I probably to this day, like, I don't have the same ability in X, Y, Z as this person, that person. So that was the cause. Like, if I drill down to it, why am I insecure? Okay, so it could be this thing, right? Fine. So my approach now is actually to accept that, but through a journey of, like, it's cliche, but self-knowledge, you get to know your strengths. And now, rather than compare myself with that person on one level, like this ability or this skill, I try more now to be more sort of in touch with my own strengths and compare my strengths to on that same level, and you can beat other people. on different levels. So that's helped me, because it's like, okay, I'm not going to be as good as that person in that thing, but I can be better than them in another thing, and that's okay. And I have my own strengths, and I think that's helped.
Yeah, and I have to add one thing to this, what Alicia mentioned. So if you're here at Imperial, that means that you're surrounded by some of the most brilliant people in the country. So it's very normal to expect that there will be many people around you who are smarter than you in something, or better than you in something. So this is, as you say, a matter of accepting yourself and others, and just living with it,
but not leaving it as therefore I'm absolutely, but taking a bigger picture of you yourself as a person and them as a person, and
you can always work on anything that you discover about yourself that you see that takes some improvement. Work on it. And that's it.
Absolutely. And we do focus a lot on being quite competitive here in Peru, but you also got to think about making sure you're reaching out to others to help you in that approach as well. If you do feel that you mentioned, if you feel that somebody knows a little bit more about a subject than you do, then approach them and ask them for help, so they help with the knowledge, and vice versa. Because I can guarantee everybody's going through their own different challenges and will struggle in certain different areas. So as opposed to saying each one teach one, just try and help and support each other and take that collaborative approach as well as being competitive. I think really helpful. We spoke quite a lot about your personal journeys and some of the internal themes that we have. I just want to quickly touch on your organizations that you're coming from and how they have been supportive, or are they supportive in gender and progressing your careers, etc. So if we could start with your prep in Intel.
Yeah, pleasure. So Intel definitely support gender equality, and there's a lot of work being put in for that. So I'm going to mention some numbers and some information, but if you go online and just search for Intel corporate responsibility reports, then you can see it for yourself, what they've been doing and how things been changing over the years in terms of women in STEM and many more areas actually. So just to give you a brief idea, we at Intel have something called RISE 2030 goals. So RISE stands for responsible, inclusive, sustainable and enabling. And if we just concentrate on the gender equality topic, Intel has this goal to increase the number of women in tech roles that they employ to 40% by 2030. Okay, 40% might not sound that high. It's not even 50, but according to our latest report, which was published in October 2020, the number of women working in tech roles is 25%. And they have this strong goal to increase this within the next 8 years to 40%. And that requires a lot of work to be done, because it's not just about Intel not hiring women to work for. We actually lack a female talent pipeline in STEM areas. So when I finished my PhD, I was literally editing my LinkedIn profile when Intel recruiters approached me and said, "You're the person we're looking for. Are you interested in this role?" So they are really out there hunting female talent, and they want to include more and more females into the company. And also, I don't have the latest results, so I'm not sure what the percentage is right now, but we do publish this report annually. So I believe it should be available soon, maybe next month or so. So you can go online and search for it. And another interesting thing that I read, and I believe it is still a big topic in the UK, is the gender pay gap. So according to Intel's published data, we achieved gender pay equality since 2019. So that's very encouraging. And there are a lot of initiatives going on within the company. They take role in career days. They try to support universities all around the world, globally, not just in the UK. And I try to take part in these activities as much as I can, but you know, pandemic didn't really help. We did try to organize few virtual events during the pandemic period, just to influence younger generation females. And I also attended few career days. One, it was actually in a all-girl high school. So I do try to be part of, but as I said, I'm happy to be working at Intel because I feel like as a person, I'm valued. My opinions are valued. My ideas are respected. I work in a team of 13 people, all male, and all with at least 5 to 8 years at least of years of experience in the industry. And when I sit down with these people and have a chat and have, you know, a discussion about a project, a customer, I am always invited, and I'm not just invited, but my ideas are welcomed. Yes. And we sit down and we discuss, we exchange ideas, and at the end we collaborate, as you pointed out, we collaborate all together and something comes out of it. So it's not about bragging about the company, this is what they're actually doing, and I feel quite privileged to be working there.
Oh, that sounds fantastic, and a really good example of some active allyship. So yes, you've been invited to the table, but your ideas and contributions are actually seriously being valued and taken forward, which is super, super important. So thank you. Alina?
So I can only speak for University of Manchester.
Yes.
I've never felt any gender gaps over there in any sense, and I believe this is the case with any academic environment, at least in the UK. I'm very glad to hear that in industry as well, a lot of things are being done to improve the position of women in the workplace. Our EDI office is also very active. I'm personally also very active in promoting women in power, or women in power engineering. I did not mention that at the beginning, so I was until recently the UK and Ireland representative for IEEE Power and Energy Society Women in Power, and I'm now representative for Region 8, which means that I will be working with women from Europe, Middle East, and Africa. So we are trying to promote the work of female engineers, both in academia and industry, to liaise between people, to help people achieve their career goals, whatever they are. It doesn't mean that all female engineers have to be managers somewhere. It's about an individual career path. And also in my prior education, during my undergraduate and master courses, I always felt equal with my male, with other students. So I never felt that I had to do something more. I never felt intimidated in any way. So in that sense, I have to say that I've never really encountered such a problem that had to do with gender.
No, thank you for sharing. Is there anything that Imperial is going to help support you?
I think Imperial are doing quite a lot. I mean, there's my supervisor has quite a few female students, along with 3 daughters. So, and his network of sort of ex-students as well. So like someone like Brianna, who was at National Grid, she was head of Women's Network, and he's, you know, trying to encourage us, and I think that's very helpful. But I think probably the program that pushed me most here at Imperial was that we innovated the Enterprise Lab, which is for women-led startups. Highly recommend to all the women here, because it's just, you know, sometimes, again with the imposter syndrome, sometimes you think you don't even put yourself into a category because you're like, no. And I was very fortunate to have, and also another ex-student of Goran's, who was just like, apply, you know. And I was like, really? What could I possibly have to offer? Like, what could I possibly? And so he, you know, encouraged me to apply, helped, you know, read over my application, told me to like simplify it by a lot, and I got accepted. And I think being in that female environment in the Enterprise Lab was very, very encouraging for me. So that's a program that Imperial put in place that has been very helpful.
Yeah, no, thank you for sharing. And a little quick shameless plug, it is Women Imperial Week, so Imperial is really committed to supporting women throughout their careers and their journeys here at Imperial, from students to staff members. I know that we do a lot of work with the FINA Swan charters, and also we report on the gender pay gaps as well. I'll just quickly move to Evan.
So can I just confirm? So the question was what my department doing, my organization is doing to promote gender equality, and what I've done as well. Is that correct? Yeah, sort of. Okay. Alicia and I, we are in the same umbrella organization. So I'm in the Department of Computing with the Faculty of Engineering here. So we have a full-time staff member who, this is what I find that is really, really supportive. There is someone who actually is there full-time looking at the causes of the imbalance in the genders, and also looks at all the opportunities there and disseminates the information. So I have to credit Dr. Jackie Bell, who I know who's a senior teaching fellow here, but she's also an astrophysicist and an astronaut in training, I just learned. She was the one who, just to illustrate how somebody who does this full-time is important for women to liaise with. She was the one who told me about the Data Science for All program, and was encouraged me to apply. And I eventually got into that program, being the only clinician in the cohort in North America and Europe. But I think what I think is really important is just have this key person who actually does serious research and looks at all the ways that we can make, that can improve equality for everyone. For me personally, I don't do, I don't do, how shall I put it? I am not in in a similar role, but what I do is I volunteer as a PhD student mentor, just to increase the visibility of women, so that fellow students will know, look, I'm like you here. You can speak to me if you want. That is for Imperial. And then I volunteered recently for the London School of Hygiene Student Wellbeing Program, especially in this pandemic where we don't get to have good conversations with each other and exchange ideas. So I volunteered as a well-being student support member. But yes, that's pretty much what I've done.
Yeah, brilliant. No, thank you for sharing that, and it's great to see that you're volunteering and that you're putting back into the community as well where you can, and it's been really helpful to supporting other women getting into the roles that they are. Now, we've heard quite a bit from our panel today, so we want to hear a bit from our audience. I know we've got a few questions, some in the chat, and we will take some in the room. But I think if we start from our online chat first.
Okay, so the first is more of a comment rather than a question. Aizen sent to everyone, your dad is so cool, yeah, Prag.
Definitely.
To move to our first question from the audience. It's coming from Sheena, who's also with the Center for, the Equality, Diversity and Inclusion Center at Imperial College. She asks, do you feel like there is lack of support for women that want to pursue or further their career in STEM? So looking at support during your master's, PhD, or postdoc/fellow level, specifically in academia.
I can comment as, I mean, I can just start. I think that the problem is not at the university level. I think the problem is at the primary school and the secondary school level. This is where girls, boys as well, both boys and girls have to realize that they can do anything if they want to. So once you reach the undergraduate level, I think the level of support is already very good. all the teachers, all the university staff, I would say anywhere in the UK is very supportive. So from that point on, there is no problem. You can do anything you want. The opportunities are there. But I think that schools, parents need to work on showing the opportunities to their children. I think this is where the problem is, and this is why we don't have as many girls studying STEM subjects.
I would agree that it happens at school. So I taught secondary physics, and come year 9, which is one before GCSE, it's that borderline, the girls have made their mind up. Like if they're going to science, going to physics, then they're going to go. If they're not, then I'm going to do this other thing. And the social, sort of the peer group pressure is immense in shaping that decision. And what I've sort of thought about more recently is, yeah, you know, I've gone back into the school I taught at, and, you know, I spoke to a group of girls, and I thought the school wanted me to talk to them. They were finishing their GCSEs and choosing A-levels. And I said to the school, no, it's too late now, because only 3 of them wanted to do physics or something. But I do think that the peer group pressure is also informed by outside societal TV, Instagram, you name it. So it is a systemic, unfortunately. It's wider than just, you know, the school environment, what feeds into the school environment. And I think things are slowly changing. So that's been quite promising. But when I did ask the girls to close their eyes and picture an engineer, of course, white male, bright yellow hat, you know, high-vis waistcoat, like that. One of them did say, no. When I closed my eyes, she was a woman. I was like, great, one of them. So that was good. But yeah, so I think the stereotype is still very much entrenched at school, but I think that much more can be done to influence at that age, and I think it needs to start younger. I think GCSE A-levels too late at that point.
How old is year 9? Sorry, I didn't do my
like 14
or
so.
Okay, so I think it was about just before lockdown. I went to this secondary school, 11, 12-year-old all-girls school, and we had a booth for software engineering, actually, which is not that kind of a physical job when you imagine about it. It's not like a constructional or mechanical engineering. So we have this booth, and there were about 50, 60 girls, if I'm not mistaken. We only had 2 stop-bys because they would see software engineering and they was just ignore and move. So I think, agreeing with both of you, there's a lot of work to be done to teach the kids what kind of career paths that they can have by choosing a STEM subject. And I 100% agree that the education starts with the society, with the parents. We have to, as women in STEM, we have to, in a way, show them that STEM is not gender specific. It is actually the future, especially we're in the technology era. So it is the future. It opens up so many doors because the skills that you gain, it's just transferable. I mean, personal example, after I graduated from my master's degree, I went and worked in finance for about 10 months because I was interested in finance. So I thought I should give it a try. I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. So I thought I should give it a try, and I was good at my job. It wasn't just for me. I tried it. But the most important thing here is to know that these skills are applicable to many different areas, and we have to teach the society that, you know, the kids, the daughters should be choosing these pathways if they're really interested.
If they want to, that's the key.
Yes, exactly.
I think the key is removing barriers to them pursuing what they really want to do.
Yeah. Exactly.
Absolutely. So wider participation activities at universities do play a big part in some of that, but yes, you're right that there's still a lot more to do in terms of general society education to try and get them through that leaky pipeline that we see.
I guess I have one more comment to add, which it relates to me a lot. Growing up, I wanted to be a medical doctor because that's what I knew. I didn't have an understanding of what an engineer might do in the world, right?
Yeah.
My father was an electrical engineer. He was working on some papers, some projects. Okay, that's about it. So I think it's quite important to be able to show, demonstrate what actual degrees can lead to in their life. And we actually need to show them how the things that they learn at school actually relates to real life and how they can take those information and apply it. So yes, young age is very important in creating awareness and lifting the barriers.
Definitely, thank you. Did we have time for another question?
Do not have another question coming from online just yet,
Okay.
but I would like to encourage everyone to get involved. Please write your message or your question in the chat, or raise your hand if you'd like to address our panel directly.
Definitely. Do we have a question in the back there?
Yeah, so actually just hopping off of that one, I'm interested to hear your opinions on, I guess we're coming to an era where we are celebrating diversity at such heights, and particularly ones that can provide our pride parades, right?
Yes.
Where being an individual or being unique is so celebrated. Do you think that's a way of combating this idea of social pressure to conform in some ways, that we can maybe get the next generation to be more individualistic in some ways? Hopefully not to a detrimental level, but like, you know, I think that would be one way to get in touch with the younger group.
Could you summarize the question again? I couldn't hear it very well, sorry.
Okay, the question was, in an age where we celebrate diversity, for example, pride parades, is this going to help to increase or you know, equalize things a bit more? Is that what you...
And engage our younger audience.
Oh, you were just talking about social pressure, right?
Yeah.
So the idea of you are special, you have your own perspective, your own interpretation
Yes.
of these gender and sexual orientation words.
Okay.
Identify you as a person, like combat the social pressure
Yeah.
that we already see.
So is celebrating your uniqueness and your diversity, is that a way to combat the kind of social pressures to conform to stereotypes and things like that? Yeah.
This reminds me really of a quote by Rousseau, which I didn't read the whole social contract. I'm not trying to sound like a pseudo intellectual, but I just remember the opening of it. L'homme est né libre et partout il est dans les fers. Mankind are born free. Everywhere he is in chains. So yeah, I thought about that question. You know, when we're born, you know, this pure innocent creature, and then suddenly society or family slap this identity on us. You are a girl, so you will dress as such, you will lead your life as such, and if you deviate from that, then you know you have a lot of difficulty. It's a difficult one, and I think for me the reason why perhaps I've been able to explore what I want to do and who I am is because I've had the opportunity to take time out from my society, call it a bit of a break, look at it from the outside in. But it's a really privileged thing to occur because I got a scholarship to study abroad. My parents can possibly afford my education. I think it's a difficult one because if that is all you know, you can't be something you don't know. But I think at the end of the day, we should just close our eyes and look at each other through our mind's eye rather than our eyes. And we should see each other and ourselves as just humans, and not just white, blue, black, beige, or a guy or a girl, or you know, whatever chromosome you are. And that goes for even looking in the mirror. I think here's the thing though. For on the one hand, you have people trying to you have this pressure to conform, but on the other hand, there's also this pressure to be authentic. I look at LinkedIn and Facebook sometimes, and I get that pressure because everybody is trying to like show their authenticity. It gets really, it can feel very oh god, as assault to your mind and senses. And I am personally, I don't look like it, but I'm a pretty private person. I like to do my own thing, but coming into academia, it's a bit of a discomfort for me because I have to speak, I have to promote my work. I'm running a clinical trial. I can't do a trial if I can't recruit people. Yeah, that's definitely hard. But I think we should celebrate exploring. And it's okay to try, crash and burn rather than to not try at all. But at the same time, just see that we don't have a manual here, and at the end of the day, what works is just kindness to us and other people, and just look at other people with our mind's eye. I don't know whether that addresses your question, but I certainly don't live life thinking that I have to be authentic today. When I get really anxious, when people tell me you should be this, you should be that, you should be this, you should be that, I just speak to whatever these thoughts are, saying like, shut up. I release myself from all these burdens, and I just feel like, oh, a sense of relief, and it's fine to me, and that's how I do it.
Yeah, no, thank you, and hopefully that answers somewhat to your question.
She's obviously very strong. Right?
You're obviously very strong.
She's thought about this kind of stuff before, and so she is an individual knows herself.
Yes.
And that's just one step forward towards maybe guiding someone like me, inspiring me right today to continue down the path that I stepped on.
You've inspired her.
Which is great. Yeah, we have a question in the front.
So I'm studying like MSc in applied machine learning here. And I also study IEEE at the University of Manchester.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and firstly, I'm so glad to be here to hear your stories and experience. I can see that you all have experienced PhD life, right? And then, as you know, there's not many girls who like are willing to keep going their study for a PhD or further. Even my friends who study like with me engineering as a girl, they don't really choose to study like PhD. I don't know why. But anyway, like in terms of this, I would like to ask you, what made you to keep going to study further as a PhD or further? And also, if you have faced any issues in terms of like personal or environment when you do PhD.
Where do we start with that one? Yeah. For the so there are two parts. The question is the questioner was saying that she's doing her master's and she's, you know, her female colleagues are not so keen to carry on for a PhD, and so she's asking the panel to go into further study to PhD level. And then she's also asking about personal and environmental struggles during the PhD, and that's when I said, where do we start with that one? Okay, please.
Okay, I'll start. I didn't want to do a PhD. So as I said, after graduating from masters, I went into finance and worked in finance industry for 10 months. It was just simply because I wasn't sure if I wanted to do engineering, if I wanted to pursue a career in engineering. I still, at the age of 21 and graduating from undergrad and masters, I still didn't have that vision of what I could do with my degree. So I wasn't passionate that much, I would say. I mean, as I said, I wanted to become a medical doctor. Then because I was good at maths, I decided to go in engineering. So for me, I didn't have that set career path and I had to try. But when I tried this something different, I just realized that I had this engineering gene built in me, if it makes sense. So I was looking for a challenge. I got used to getting challenged, and you know, I wanted to use that analytical, critical thinking, the problem solving. I wasn't the person to be behind you know, behind the computer crunching some numbers. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing, it wasn't just for me. So that's when I started thinking maybe I should go back to engineering, but I was still a bit resistant to the idea of PhD, because in my head, it was such a big task. It required a lot of determination, and I needed to have the passion to do it. And while I was going back and forth, that's when my supervisor came into play, and he just said, you have what it takes to do this, so why not? And I was like, I've always been good in academia. I'm sure I can go into a academic role, academic career path, so I'll do my PhD. And that's how I decided to get into PhD. And unlike my colleagues here, I didn't stay in the academic path, because while I was doing my PhD, I just thought to myself, okay, I experienced a lot academia, there's probably more to explore, but I want to try something different. So I guess I'm all about trying something different, pushing myself out of my comfort zone, and you know, just get more experience and more perspective on how the world works. So I didn't want to get in academia and stay there. I just wanted to explore different things. So this is my journey, why I went into PhD and then industry. I never had a set plan, and I had my time of challenge. It was mentally challenging very much when you think about it. I was thinking to myself, it's never going to end. It's never going to end. Now it's first year's done, but it's never going to finish. I'm not going to publish a paper. I'm not going to go to a conference. I'm not going to have an article. But it all worked out. It all happened. But it's just, it was mentally a strong battle. And I believe, please correct me if I'm wrong, but anyone going through a PhD journey feels the same way. It's just feels like it's never going to end. But once you submit that thesis, once you write the acknowledgement page in the front, you just realize, oh my God, I did it. And that feeling never goes away. I still turn back. It's been 3 years now. I still turn back and say, oh my God, I did it. So that's my journey.
Anybody wanted to add?
Yeah, I can continue. So my journey was not so different from that one. So after, actually, while doing my MSc back in Serbia, I started working. Let's call it industry. In industry. So I was behind the computer typing something, and I survived for 2.5 years. And I realized I was bored. I was so bored. I learned what I had to learn by that time, and there was absolutely nothing challenging for me. I was trying to find the challenge and to be added to projects and so on, but the system was simply very slow. Maybe something would have happened if I had stayed for a few more years. And so I did a PhD simply because I didn't want to be bored anymore. I had absolutely no idea what was ahead. So I had no idea if I'm going to succeed, what I'm going to get from this PhD, how it is going to look like. So I came to the UK without knowing anyone. So the only contact I had was my supervisor, who I had seen maybe 2 times during the interview and so on. And definitely it was a nerve-wracking period, definitely. So I really think that whoever finishes undergraduate, master level is able to do a PhD if they want to. But then comes the nerves problem, because you really need to push yourself to the very end, because it is a long process. So it is almost it is actually as doing another set of studies, because it's 3 to 4 years, at least in Manchester. But I was also very lucky to have a very demanding supervisor. So when you have someone with high expectations, then you also have high expectations. And while trying to achieve them, you actually do things on the way. So it definitely a very rewarding experience. You don't have to continue with academia afterwards. I've heard recently, at least in Manchester, 80% of postdocs, they don't stay in academia, they move to industry and then so on. Well, the money is better. Yes, I would suggest a PhD to anyone who is willing to explore. Definitely a rewarding experience and definitely a lot of skills that you will acquire during that road.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm just conscious of time, so hopefully that answered your question. And we do have an excellent postdoc and fellows development centre here as well. So if you do want to explore other options, you can. I just want, hopefully, you can all join me in thinking. Or we can take one more question. Yeah. So we can take one more question. Sorry.
I just have an. I think just getting back to the question on why do people not do PhD. One of the things that I would say having a PhD is just another career path. It's not better than doing a master's or leaving or doing anything. It's just we also need to make sure that people understand that it's a career path. It's not better. You're not better. You might be more special. It's a job. It's you're doing your research job and that's what it is, and everyone should be encouraged to explore that opportunity, but putting it on the same level as every other opportunity is very important.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that's a brilliant place to end up. I think that's a very important point, and I think our entire panel will agree. So, and see, and then would you like to just make a last final comment?
Yeah, just not just about my journey as a PhD, but I just wanted to the attendee who asked me about being authentic and things. My journey certainly hasn't been something that I worked out on my own, and this is something quite key that I think isn't talked about very frequently. Is about professional help. Coming from a medical background, I see a lot of patients who get unwell because of environmental factors. And it's okay, you're not weak or anything, and the mind can get unwell the way the body can. And I think even if you feel okay, it's good to speak to a professional. And I mean, like, I put my hand up and say, I've spoken to professionals. I didn't realize how valuable this was until much later in my training. How could it not be essential? I mean, dealing with life and death every day, and then getting questioned about, getting existential crises from all of these. It takes professional help. So I think the other take-home message for me is don't do this on your own. You also need somebody to be a mirror, to reflect what your thoughts are and actually help you find a healthy way to deal with it. So I credit all the people who supported me there throughout my journey.
Yeah, no, absolutely a great final point. Hopefully you'll be able to all join me in thanking our fantastic panel today. So we have Dr. Eisen, Dr. Yaprak, Dr. Lena, and Alicia. Thank you so much for joining us today.